There are two versions of you living simultaneously right now. One is here now, breathing. The other is trapped in an endless race against something that doesn't even exist. And you've been feeding the wrong version your entire life. Have you ever felt that strange sensation of always being late, even when you have no appointments? As if a silent race is happening, and you're losing. This isn't a coincidence. It's a symptom of an invisible prison that has captured your mind without you even realizing it. Eckhart Tolle discovered something disturbing about the nature of time, something that explains why you feel like the days fly by, why you live anxiously about the future, why the past haunts you even when you try to forget. Time isn't what you think it is. In fact, there are two types of time operating in your life simultaneously. One is real. The other is an illusion so convincing that 99% of people are trapped in it without ever suspecting it. Close your eyes for a second. Feel your breath. Where is time now? Open your eyes. Now think about tomorrow's meeting. Where did that piece go? What just happened is the difference between real time and psychological time, and this difference is stealing your life. Imagine a bird in a gilded cage. The cage is so beautiful that it doesn't even notice the bars. It flies from side to side, flapping its wings desperately, never noticing that the door has always been open. You are that bird. Psychological time is your gilded cage. But before I explain how to escape, I need to show you how deep this prison is. Because what you're about to discover will shake everything you believe about productivity, about success, about what it means to be alive. Have you noticed how the most anxious people are always the ones who talk the most about time management? How those who live stressed are always optimizing their schedules? How those who feel they don't have time never stop looking at the clock? It's paradoxical. The more you try to control time, the more it seems to control you. Eckhart Tolle realized that this isn't a matter of organization. It's a matter of perception. Your mind has created a fictitious version of time, a narrative about the past and future that has become more real to you than the present. And here's the detail that no one tells you. Past and future do not exist. They never existed. They are mental constructs, memories and projections. The only real time is now. But if this is true, why do you feel like you're always running? Why is there this constant rush, this sense of urgency that has no logical explanation? The answer will surprise you. Your mind has developed an addiction to temporal narratives. It's constantly creating stories about where you should be, what you should have done, where you need to go, like a movie that never stops playing in your head. And the more you feed these stories, the more real they become, until your whole life transforms into a frantic chase of a time that only exists in your imagination. Think about that moment yesterday when you were doing something you loved. You lost track of time, didn't you? Where was your anxiety at that moment? Where was the rush and it disappeared? Because you had entered real time, the time of now. But then your mind came back. It brought back the worries, the mental to-do lists, the should have and need to do, and there you go, the prison closed again. Eckhart Tolle calls this the temporal body of pain. It's as if your mind had a parasitic organism that feeds on anxiety about time. The more you worry about deadlines, the stronger it gets. The more you regret the past, the more it grows. And here's what's really frightening. This mental parasite has convinced you that it is you, that this inner voice that is always calculating, planning, repenting is who you really are. But it's not. There is a deeper consciousness observing all this, a presence that has no age, that is not worried about schedules, that simply exists. This is your true identity. Psychological time is just mental noise, a radio frequency you forgot to turn off. I'm going to show you something practical now. Stop for a moment. Pay attention to the space between your thoughts, that almost imperceptible pause between one idea and another. Can you feel it? That silence has no time. It's not in a hurry. It's not going anywhere or running away from anything. That silence is who you really are when you stop identifying with the mental chatter about time. But modern society conspires against this discovery. Everything around you has been designed to keep you trapped in psychological time. Notifications that create artificial urgency, deadlines that generate anxiety, The culture of productivity that transforms your existence into an Excel spreadsheet. You're not competing with time, you're competing with an illusion. And here's the twist that has changed the lives of millions of people. Eckhart discovered that the more you try to escape the present moment, the more suffering you create. The more you live in psychological time, the more you move away from the only dimension where life really happens. The now. Not the now of doing a 5-minute meditation, the now of being completely present while brushing your teeth, while walking, while working, while living. This sounds too simple to be revolutionary, doesn't it? But it's precisely this simplicity that your complicated mind resists. It prefers the neurotic complexity of psychological time to the silent elegance of the present. Let me tell you about Sarah, a 34-year-old executive, busy schedule, always running. She used to say she didn't have time for anything, until the day she noticed something strange. In the rare moments when she stopped to observe a tree outside her window, time expanded. 5 minutes felt like a peaceful eternity. She discovered that the feeling of not having time came from thoughts about time, not from time itself. When you are completely present washing dishes, the dishes become meditation. When you are completely present in a conversation, time stops. When you are completely present working, the work flows effortlessly. The secret is not to manage time, it's to transcend the illusion of psychological time. But your mind will resist this idea. It will say it's impractical, that you have responsibilities, that you need to plan for the future and learn from the past. And that's true. But there's a subtle and transformative difference between using temporal thinking as a tool and being used by it as a slave. When you schedule a meeting, you use time. When you worry about the meeting for 3 days, time is using you. When you learn from a past mistake, you use memory. When you ruminate on that mistake for weeks, memory is using you. Temporal freedom isn't about ignoring clocks or abandoning planning. It's about not being emotionally hijacked by temporal concepts. It's about keeping your identity rooted in the present, even when your mind needs to visit the past or future. Eckhart Tolle realized that human suffering has a strangely simple mathematical formula. Suffering is always resistance to the present moment, multiplied by identification with psychological time. When you fully accept what's happening now without mentally fighting it, suffering simply disappears. Not because the situation changed, but because you stopped creating a second layer of suffering through temporal narratives. You stop suffering from suffering. You stop stressing about being stressed. You stop having anxiety about your anxiety. And in that moment of total acceptance, something magical happens. The present reveals itself, not as a moment in time, but as the only dimension where you have real power. The past only exists in your present memory. The future only exists in your present imagination. But your capacity to love, to create, to choose, to be happy, to be at peace, exists only now. It always has. You simply forgot. The prison of psychological time made you believe that happiness was at some future point, that peace would come when you solved all your problems. That satisfaction would arrive when you achieved all your goals. But what if I told you that happiness, peace and satisfaction are available now, unconditional, independent of external circumstances? Your mind will immediately reject this possibility. It will present a list of reasons why you can't be happy now. Financial problems, complicated relationships, unmet goals. But notice something curious. Who is creating this list? Who is insisting that happiness is impossible in the present? The same mind that created your temporal prison. Have you ever had moments where, inexplicably, you felt perfectly fine for no apparent reason? Maybe watching a sunset or playing with a child, or listening to music that touched your soul. In those moments, where were your problems? Where was your rush? Where was your temporal anxiety? They still existed, but they couldn't touch you. Because you had connected with a dimension of your consciousness that is unaffected by temporal circumstances. That dimension has always been there. It's you when you're not identifying with the mental narrative about time. And here's what may sound impossible but is absolutely true. You can access this dimension consciously. You can choose when to identify with psychological time and when to free yourself from it. It doesn't require years of meditation. It doesn't require isolation in a monastery. It requires only a subtle but profound shift in your attention. Instead of living through time, you learn to live in time. Instead of being a victim of time, you become a conscious observer of it. And when that happens, your entire life transforms. Not because your circumstances change, but because your relationship with them becomes fundamentally different. Problems continue to exist, but they can no longer emotionally hijack you. You deal with them from a place of clarity instead of reactivity. Goals remain important, but you no longer sacrifice the present in a neurotic pursuit of the future. Memories remain valid, but you no longer live trapped in mental versions of the past. You become free, not free from responsibilities, but free within them. And this freedom has a specific flavor. It's like waking up from a nightmare you didn't even know you were having. Like breathing fresh air after years in a stuffy room. Like escaping a constant conversation to find a silence full of possibilities. But to fully experience this freedom, you need to understand how the temporal prison was built in your mind. You need to see the specific mechanisms that keep it running, and that's exactly what we're going to explore next, because knowing the enemy is the first step to liberation. The first thing you need to understand is how your mind constructs the temporal illusion. It's such an automatic process that it happens without you noticing, like breathing but much more dangerous. Your mind works like a narrative machine. It's constantly creating stories about who you were, who you are, and who you should become. And these stories always have a timeline. I was happy before. I will be successful when. I should have done differently. Each of these phrases is a prison disguised as useful thought. Eckhart Tolle discovered that our minds developed this temporal obsession as a survival mechanism. In primitive times, remembering where danger was and planning where to find food were matters of life or death. But our minds never evolved for modern life. They still function as if every deadline were a predator, as if every past embarrassment were a physical wound, as if every future plan were a matter of survival. And here's the problem. Your primitive mind cannot distinguish between a real threat and an imaginary threat, between a present danger and a temporal worry. When you think about tomorrow's presentation, your body reacts as if the danger were now. When you recall an argument from last month, your emotions respond as if it were happening again. You are living in multiple timelines simultaneously, and this is literally killing you from the inside. Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn, who worked with Eckhart Tolle's insights, discovered something disturbing. People who constantly live in psychological time have chronically elevated cortisol levels. It's as if they are in a state of constant alert against a non-existent enemy. Their bodies age faster, their immune systems weaken, their capacity to feel pleasure diminishes. Psychological time is not just a mental problem, it's a physical, emotional, and spiritual problem. But there is a way out, and it begins with a simple but revolutionary discovery. You are not your thoughts about time. You are the one who observes those thoughts. There's a fundamental difference between thinking I'm late and observing the thought I'm late arising in your mind. In the first case, you are identified with the thought. In the second, you are free from it. This difference changes everything. When you learn to position yourself as an observer of your temporal thoughts, they lose the power to emotionally hijack you. They still appear, but they can no longer control you. It's like watching a horror movie knowing it's fiction. You can engage with the story without believing you're in real danger. Let me teach you the first practical technique to escape the temporal prison. Eckhart Tolle calls it the power of conscious now. In the next 30 seconds, try this. Pay attention to your body. Feel your feet touching the ground. Feel the air entering and leaving your lungs. Feel the weight of your clothes on your skin. While you were doing that, where were your worries? Where was your mental rush? They temporarily disappeared because you brought your attention to the only moment that truly exists. This is the key to temporal freedom, conscious attention to the present. But your mind will try to convince you this is impractical. It will say you need to think about the future to be responsible. that you need to process the past to learn, and it's right. But there's a huge difference between using temporal thinking consciously and being compulsively used by it. When you plan consciously, you do it from the present. When you learn from the past consciously, you do it from the present. But when you're hijacked by future worries or past ruminations, you abandon the present. And the present is the only place where you have real power. In the past, yes, you can't change anything. In the future, you can't do anything yet. But now, you can choose your thoughts, your actions, your responses. Now you can love. Now you can create. Now you can decide who you want to be. Marcus was 45 when he discovered this, a successful businessman, but he lived anxious about the future and regretful about the past. One day, walking in the park, something simple happened. He really paid attention to a tree. He didn't think about the tree. He didn't analyze the tree. He just observed it completely. For 15 minutes, his mind stopped creating temporal narratives. And in those 15 minutes, he experienced more peace than in the last 15 years. It wasn't conditional peace. It didn't depend on solving problems or achieving goals. It was peace intrinsic to present awareness itself. He discovered that this peace had always been available. It was just hidden under layers of temporal thoughts. That's the second technique. Eckhart Tolle calls it observation without analysis. Choose any object around you. It could be a pen, a plant, a wall. Observe it completely for 2 minutes. Don't think about it. Don't categorize. Don't analyze. Just see. When your mind starts chattering about other things, gently bring your attention back to the object. What you're doing is exercising your ability to be present, like a muscle that gets stronger with use. And here's something that will surprise you. The more you practice conscious presence, the more efficient you become in everything. Seems contradictory, doesn't it? How going slower can make you faster. The answer lies in the quality of attention. When you are completely present, there is no energy wasted on mental worries. All your cognitive capacity becomes available for the task at hand. You make fewer mistakes. You make better decisions. You solve problems more quickly. Not because you're thinking more, but because you're thinking better. The third technique Eckhart Tolle teaches is called accepting what is. This doesn't mean being passive. It means stopping creating additional suffering through mental resistance to the present moment. When you're stuck in traffic, you can get angry about the situation, or you can simply accept that you're stuck in traffic and use the time to practice presence. The difference is that in the first case, you're suffering doubly, by the situation and by your resistance to it. In the second case, you transform a potentially stressful moment into an opportunity for inner freedom. Imagine that the present is like a river. You can swim against the current, struggling and tiring yourself. Or you can float with the current, moving efficiently in the direction of the flow. Accepting what is means stopping swimming against the current of reality. But beware. Your mind will try to turn this into another self-help technique. Another item on the list of things you should do. True temporal freedom is not something you do. It's something you stop doing. You stop feeding mental narratives about time. You stop identifying with temporal worries. You stop believing that your peace depends on future circumstances. And when you stop doing these things, your essential nature emerges naturally. You discover that the peace you were looking for was here all along, not hidden in the future, not lost in the past, but available now, beneath the mental noise about time. Eckhart Tolle spent years developing a deep understanding of this transformation. He realized that most people live like temporal sleepwalkers. They are technically awake, but psychologically trapped in dreams about the past and future. And awakening isn't complicated. It's simple. Perhaps too simple for the mind addicted to complexity. Awakening is noticing that you are dreaming and choosing to wake up. But there's a final obstacle that needs to be addressed: the fear of the present. Many people resist conscious presence because they are afraid of what they will find. What if the present is painful? What if the present is empty? What if the present is boring? Eckhart Tolle discovered something profound about this. The fear of the present is always based on memories of the past or projections of the future, never on the actual present. The present itself is never truly unbearable. It's always our mental narrative about the present that creates suffering. When a person says, "I can't be quiet with my thoughts," they are really saying, "I can't be quiet with my thoughts about my thoughts." It's an infinite loop of mental resistance. The solution is surprisingly simple. Instead of trying to stop the thoughts, you simply stop giving them so much value. Thoughts about time become like clouds in the sky. You see them passing, but you don't need to identify with them. You don't need to get on them and travel to where they are going. You remain as the sky, spacious, clear, unperturbed. And from this perspective, something magical happens. You realize that you have always been free. The temporal prison was an illusion maintained only by your constant attention to it, like a hypnotist who made you believe you were chained while your hands were always free. The moment you stop believing the hypnosis, the chains fall away. But let me be clear about something important. This freedom doesn't make you irresponsible or disconnected from practical reality. In fact, the opposite happens. When you're no longer emotionally hijacked by temporal narratives, you become more effective at handling real-world responsibilities. You make smarter plans because you're not acting from a place of anxiety. You learn better from past experiences, and because you're not stuck in guilt or regret, you become a more functional human being, not less. The difference is you're now operating from clarity instead of compulsion, from conscious choice instead of automatic reactivity. And that changes the quality of your entire life experience. Sarah, the executive I mentioned earlier, discovered something fascinating after practicing mindful presence for a few months. She still had the same packed schedule, but the quality of her days had completely transformed. Meetings became opportunities for real human connection. Projects became creative expressions instead of stressful obligations. Even problems became interesting puzzles instead of existential threats. Nothing had changed externally. Everything had changed internally. And this internal shift reflected in better external results. She made wiser decisions, built deeper relationships, felt more energized at the end of the day. Temporal freedom isn't some abstract philosophy. It's a practical tool for living a better life. But to fully integrate this freedom, you need to understand that it's a gradual process, not an instant transformation. You won't wake up tomorrow completely free from the temporal prison, but you can start noticing when you're trapped in it. And each moment of awareness is a step toward liberation. Eckhart Tolle teaches that the path is made of thousands of tiny awakenings, micro moments where you realize you've stepped out of the present and choose to return. Think of learning to ride a bike. At first you fall a lot, but gradually balance becomes natural. And here's the most beautiful part of this journey. Each moment of genuine presence not only frees you from the temporal prison, but also reveals aspects of yourself you forgot existed. Your capacity to love unconditionally, your ability to create from emptiness, your intuitive wisdom that operates beyond analytical thought. These qualities were always there. They were just obscured by the mental chatter about time. When you reconnect with the present, you reconnect with who you really are. And who you really are is far more interesting, powerful, and peaceful than any temporal narrative about you. You are not a story about past and future. You are a living consciousness experiencing eternity through each present moment. And recognizing this isn't the end of some spiritual journey. It's the beginning of living as an awakened human being. The temporal prison may have kept you asleep for years, but awakening is always available. Not at some future point after you've solved all your problems. Now, in this very moment, as you listen to these words, you can choose to connect with the presence that you truly are. And in that connection, the entire illusion of psychological time naturally unravels. You are free. You always have been. You just forgot for a while. But now, you can remember.